Well, good evening. My name's Rob Stoneman. I'm Director of Landscape Recovery at the Wildlife Trust, and I'm absolutely delighted to welcome you to the latest Wildlife. What is Wildlife? It's our opportunity to do a bit of a deep dive into some of the really topical issues affecting nature conservation, nature restoration in the UK at the moment. You know, we've lost many of our ecological links between places with rich wildlife and many of our species. We've lost auroch, we've lost tarpon, they're actually extinct. We've lost elk, we've lost wild boar, and we've lost all of our top predators, wolves, bears, lynx, wildcats. Well, we've still got wildcats, but maybe they've been hybridized out in northern Scotland. I don't think we're going to get wolves and bears back anytime soon, and it may not even be desirable. But the big cats, that's quite interesting. So tonight we're going to have a look at whether is it possible that we could bring something like the lynx back to the UK? How interesting. So it is Wildlife. It's your opportunity to ask a really fabulous panel questions. So please do use the chat function on YouTube to ask your questions. We've had a tremendous response to this. We've had 300 questions already before this even started. So I'll try and get to as many questions as possible. But if I don't get to yours, please don't take offence. We've got an amazing panel tonight. We've got Dr. Marco Hurek, who's Head of Department of National Park Monitoring and Animal Management at the Bavarian Forest National Park and Professor of Wildlife and Conservation Biology at the University of Freiburg and the University of Inland Norway. Phew, that's quite a title. Marco, we have Sue Seymour, who lives, works and farms in Northumberland, just north of Hadrian's Wall. We'll be looking at her farm later. We have Dr. Deborah Brady, lead ecologist at the Lifescape Project, and Duncan Hutt, who's Director of Conservation at Northumberland Wildlife Trust. Look, before we get into the panel discussion and the questions, let's just have a look at a video to see what is actually a lynx. What are we talking about here?
There's 4 species of lynx in the world. 2 of these are found in Europe, but only 1 was ever found in the UK, the Eurasian lynx. The Eurasian lynx is a medium-sized cat, about the same size as a Labrador. It's got sandy colour fur. Sometimes it's plain, sometimes it's got spots or rosettes on. They've got distinctive tufted ears and a short bob tail. Lynx are found in a wide variety of forests across Europe, but they're elusive and they're rarely seen by humans. They like forests and woodland like this, where there's lots of cover and they can ambush their prey. The main prey across Europe is roe deer, and they take about 1 a week, feed on it for a few days, and then cover it with leaves to keep it safe from scavengers.
Lynx are solitary animals and spend most of their life on their own. Like a lot of other cat species, they have territories and they will scent mark in order to communicate with their neighbours. Lynx territories can cover vast areas. Adult lynx will come together to mate. After a 2-month pregnancy, female lynx will give birth to a litter of kittens. Female lynx give birth to approximately 1 to 4 kittens, but on average around 2. Lynx kittens will stay together with mum until they're about 10 months old, learning how to hunt and to survive, and then they will go off and find their own territories.
Lynx survived in Britain for thousands of years. We know this from bones that have been found in caves across the UK, but also from cultural evidence such as artwork and poetry. They died out in medieval times due to hunting and persecution, and probably mostly to loss of habitat and fragmentation of woodland. Lynx were also lost from much of Europe, with populations crashing in the 18th and 19th centuries. But in Europe, lynx are bouncing back. Reintroductions are helping them to return to forests that they once called home. Is it time for them to return to Britain too? The Missing Lynx Project has shown that Northumberland has enough woodland for them to thrive. And with abundant roe deer, they could help bring back a balance to nature once more. Through our Missing Lynx exhibition, we're helping to introduce people to this missing mammal. We're having conversations about the nature crisis, the loss of lynx, and about how we might bring them back again to these islands once more. Lynx were lost from Britain, but there is still time for these charismatic cats to make a comeback.
Well, what beautiful animals they are. And our first panel member, we're going to talk to Marco. He's a researcher on the ecology behaviour of large mammals, especially lynx. He's chair of the Eurolynx initiative that's working across the whole of Europe. So we have a genuine expert in the room here. So really, really delighted to welcome you here, Marco. We've got some pictures of lynx going to play in the background because they really are a gorgeous animal. So let's just make sure we keep an eye on what they are. Marco, just tell us a little bit about the ecology of lynx and why on earth would we want them back in a place like the UK?
Yes, we already learned a lot in the video, but lynx are very beautiful animals. That's what you see, and they are very extraordinary. They are the largest cat species which we have here in Europe, and also many pictures you saw, they are stemming from the wild, not just from captivity, and they can really serve as flagship species. And can help us to support conservation. So people like the lynx. Normally they, like in Germany, they all have a positive attitude toward lynx. 90% of the population support lynx reintroductions. And this is very good. But they are also an indicator for less disturbed landscapes. They need large, unfragmented landscapes. So it's an important indicator species, but they also have a functional role in ecosystems. They are a large predator. They kill roe deer and other ungulate prey species. And by this, they have an impact on the ecosystem, and that can ripple through the ecosystem from the prey to the forest regeneration, for example. But they might also have an impact on mesopredators like foxes, releasing bird species. So there are interesting studies out.
Great, thanks, Marco. And just tell me a little bit about the story of lynx returning to mainland Europe, because I mean they were pretty much wiped out across the whole of Europe, not just in Britain, across the whole of Europe, and yet we now have European lynx back in, well, really quite a substantial area of Europe. Just tell me about how did that happen, and what did you do practically to make it happen?
So basically, they were extirpated in whole Western Europe, and they just survived in Scandinavia, in the Baltics, and in the Carpathians. And then in the 70s, there was a reintroduction initiative, or several of them, and there was the idea to bring them back. So there was a reintroduction in Germany, there were several reintroductions in Switzerland, in France, in Slovenia, and it was the start for small population. Some of them expanded, some stagnated. And so it was necessary to have a second round of reintroductions, which we have now, beginning in the 2000s in the Harz Mountains, but also in other areas of Europe. And at the moment, we even have 3 different reintroductions in Germany.
Wow. And are we getting to the point where lynx are fully back in Europe, or are we still quite a long way from that? I say Europe, mainland Europe, I mean.
Yeah, it's still a long way. And also a lot of areas are not well suited anymore for lynx. So there are industrial areas with a lot of traffic, roads, the connectivity is missing. And lynx need large landscapes with less human pressure. And there are just some areas left where they can live. And the idea is to build up a meta population to connect these areas so that the lynx can at least occupy the areas which are suitable for them. And it's
just explain that concept, meta population. That's a great piece of ecology. Just explain what that means.
Yeah, meta population is that you have several small areas where the lynx occur with a few animals, and they need to be interconnected so that the lynx from one area can go or disperse to another area. This is important, especially for genetical exchange.
Brilliant. Well, look, thank you very much, Marco. That really set the scene on what we're doing. I'm going to turn to Debs now. Debs is works for the Lifescape Project. I'll get her to explain what that is in a minute. She is the lead conservation manager for Lifescapes. She's coordinated a whole range of species reintroduction projects over her fantastic career. She's managing the Missing Lynx program, and I'll get her to explain that as well. So, Dev, just start with, what is the Lifescape Project and what is the Missing Lynx program here in the UK?
Thanks, Rob. So yeah, I work for the Lifescape Project. Lifescape Project is a charity, a rewilding focused charity. Our uniqueness is that we're multidisciplinary. So within the team, we've got ecologists, lawyers, social science expertise, and economists as well. And that grouping of expertise lends itself particularly well to species reintroductions, where it's really important to think about all those different angles. So as you say, we work across a range of species, but the lynx tonight that we're talking about tonight is within the Missing Lynx Project, which we lead with partner organisations, Northumberland Wildlife Trust and the Wildlife Trust.
And what are you actually trying to achieve in the Missing Lynx Project then?
The Missing Lynx Project has been, over the past 5 or so years, has been exploring broadly 3 aspects, whether it's ecologically feasible to bring lynx back, whether there's enough room, as Marco was talking about, the space that's needed for lynx. Is there enough for them to eat? Will they survive? Will they grow into a healthy population? The second aspect is it practically possible to do it? So lynx reintroduction has been happening for 50 years, as Marco mentioned, across Europe, and huge amounts have been learnt in that time. So looking at the practical aspects of that and whether we can replicate that sensibly here. The third aspect is the social acceptability. So over the last couple of years, I'm sure we'll come to some descriptions of it, but we've been doing really extensive consultation work across Northern England and Southern Scotland to see what people think about that. We are still in the middle of that. So those 3 aspects is what the Missing Lynx Project is exploring.
All right, so let's pick up on the first side, which is that kind of, is it possible in an ecological sense? Have we got the big, Marco's talked about we need this kind of big wilderness areas to have lynx back in. And, Britain's a, very densely populated island with, it's been we call it a cultural landscape often, so ecologically, is it anyway feasible to get lynx back into the UK?
Yeah, so that was exactly where we started, looking at ecology first of all. So we had to make sure that was right. Is there even a sort of practical ecological basis that we can bring the lynx back into? So we did that with a new base habitat map for the whole of Britain as an island, and then on top of that, a method where you can simulate in a computer simulation of lynx breeding and moving and dying and increasing in number to test the viability, how well the population would survive. So we tested that across England, Wales and Scotland to look at whether lynx could survive. And the approach that we used was actually the approach that had originally been designed to test this in Germany a couple of decades ago, when Germany was still first going down the path of thinking whether to bring lynx back. So that work, of all the locations that we tested in England and Wales, the only place that's currently viable, that as you say, it's got enough space for lynx to be, is Northern England, a habitat patch in Northern England that crosses over into Southern Scotland. That's for England and Wales. For Scotland, there's quite a lot of areas that are viable, so particularly the Highlands of Scotland. So the patch in Northern England, Southern Scotland is viable. It would work. It would hold about 50 to 70 lynx. The Highlands is also separately works, and that's sort of in the region of about 250 lynx. They actually really struggle to get through up and down between the Highlands and that Northern England, Southern Scotland area. There's a little bit of connectivity, enough for some genetic transfer, which is similar to what Marco has described, is found across Europe, that you can have patches where lynx can be, as long as there's a little bit of communication between them.
And I suppose proof of the pudding is that the same modelling was used in Germany and in mainland Europe, and has shown to be effective. And when we do have lynx back in those places, can you be confident that if we reintroduce lynx, it would actually work ecologically? Is that what the modelling's saying?
There is 50 years of thinking about this and working out how to answer those questions. So we're relying on that base science, but from that modelling that we've done, sort of lots of questions have emerged that we're then subsequently answering. So for example, will the lynx have enough to eat? So using that modelling work, which shows us probably where they'll occur, to then think about what are the levels of deer. Their primary food as has been mentioned, is roe deer. Is there enough roe deer in that area for them to eat? What's the likelihood of mortality from different reasons? What might their impact be on protected areas and other species? So all of those other ecological questions are also being answered within the work that we're doing.
Brilliant. Okay, well, let me just quickly move on to the third aspect of what this project is. What you were talking about there was the social side. So all very well. So we've got big enough woods basically to bring lynx in with loads of deer in that they'll be very happy munching away on. But will people like it? You know, how do you go about trying to find out whether people would accept lynx in living in and around where they live?
We started planning how to answer that question about 6 or 7 years ago, sort of the thinking behind it, and how do we bring people into the conversation? How do we bring enough people in? How do we create space for people to give their views and opinions, and time actually for us to listen to and be heard? And how do we capture all that? And it has been a gigantic task, and so it should be, because it's a really big decision that we're all collectively as a country trying to make. So we had an exhibition, an audio-visual exhibition, which had projections and touchscreens with lots of information. I can see it's being shown on screen, which is really helpful. We took that to 15 locations over 100 days, Northern England, Southern Scotland, and we had almost 10,000 people came along to that exhibition. So the biggest ever consultation on a species reintroduction ever to have occurred. So 10,000 face-to-face conversations with people staying there for half an hour or longer sometimes. And then from that, lots of subsequent ways that people could be heard. So interviews, focus groups, workshops, lots of ways where people could express their opinion, but really importantly, not just express opinion and have questions answered, but for the areas where we need to think more carefully about how we might do it. So people who might be negatively impacted or conversely positively impacted, there's time and space to work out how we approach this project if we are to go ahead putting lynx back into this country.
Wow, I mean, that's quite a social consultation exercise. And well, I mean, generally, what was the outcome of that? What was the response to people?
So in August, we had enough information that we could release our interim high-level results. As part of that consultation, we did do a questionnaire that many people answered. And the results of that questionnaire demonstrate that 72% of people within that project region are supportive of lynx reintroduction. So broadly, across the general public and the communities in that area, there is support for it. And now the work that we're doing is looking at how can we make plans that are practical and doable on the ground and meet people's expectations and allay concerns and create plans that people are confident in that can be enacted within a project.
Brilliant, thanks, Debs. Well, look, I'm going to turn to Sue now. Sue is a farmer in this area, this patch, this ecological patch that we're talking about. So has a sort of unique understanding of what's going on there. But just before we do that, we're going to play a video about Sue's farm because it's really rather beautiful and it's full of peatlands. So let's just have the video first.
Welcome to Moss Petrel Farm. It's a 1,000-acre farm just north of Hadrian's Wall in the Northumberland National Park. In 2024, we signed a higher tier countryside stewardship arrangement. We've always been looking after nature, but that has very much changed how we do things. We've planted 5,000 trees along the bank of the Tipport, and this was primarily to mitigate against flood downstream, slow the water down, and also to shade the water. If temperatures are increasing, it's important to try and keep water cool. We also blocked up a lot of the grips and drains that previous farmers had dug on the peat bogs when they were trying to improve the land for livestock production. We want to return these areas so that they provide the maximum ecosystem services. We're also restored hay meadows like this one you see behind me now. We're going to be planting some scrub to introduce a different habitat this winter. We're doing things differently with our livestock too. When I first arrived, there was only sheep on the farm, but we've drastically reduced the number of sheep and we've introduced cattle. The cattle and the sheep are both native breeds suited to this area, and with the cattle we have a pasture for life symbol, which means cattle only eat grass and forbs, either grazing here or in the winter when there's snow on the ground or ice, we take hay and silage that we've made up to them. We've really changed our mindset about how we farm. Our aim now is to look after the environment, to increase biodiversity, and we use our livestock as tools to do this. And we view the meat that we produce as a great byproduct of looking after the environment. Come on.
Well, what a beautiful farm that is. And so you're obviously, really trying hard to recover wildlife on your farm and, doing some amazing things, not least blocking up ditches and looking after that peat bog, which makes me very happy as a peat bog aficionado. That's one thing doing all that work, hay meadows, peatlands, restoration, that's pretty current around the Northumberland area. But bunging lynx into that mix, that's quite another step. What's your perspective on bringing a top predator like lynx back that, after all, could prey on your sheep?
Yeah, well, my answer to that question will be very different now to what it was when I first heard about the Missing Lynx Project. For sure, yeah, I was skeptical. These, dangerous cats that prey on small ruminants. But I was first of all interviewed by the social scientists from the Missing Lynx Project and then joined their farmer focus group. And I realised how ignorant I was about lynx. And, they don't go around killing madly like foxes do. They kill one animal and eat it. And their preferred diet is deer. And they don't go very far out of the woodland. So I came to okay, well, that's not what I thought, And the more I learned, the more I felt that it wasn't such a threat as I had originally perceived.
And you've obviously changed your mind or become much more supportive of the program, and that's fantastic. But of course, there are farmers in the area that do have concerns, and they are legitimate concerns. And Deb said that they need to be thought about and then think about how we solve them. But what are the sort of concerns that you're picking up, say, amongst your neighbours or some of the farmers in the area?
Well, it is basically farmers who've got enough problems. We're struggling with all sorts of things, and why should we want to introduce another one? But they are the apex predator. We haven't got any apex predators left, and it just seems right that they should be here.
And if we did, introduce something like lynx into the area, are there any positives from a farmer's perspective? Is that something, you can think, oh, wow, there's maybe some good things that come out of this,
Well, yeah, the tourism aspect is certainly, a lot of farmers have got holiday cottages or in other way involved in this area and getting part of their income from tourists, and having the lynx here, although there isn't a lot of people would be very lucky to see one. It's very unlikely because they're, secretive creatures. But, plenty of people go to Loch Ness and not many of them manage to see the Loch Ness monster, but it doesn't stop them going.
And Sue, final question for me. Just, there, we know that there are some people that still have concerns. So how do you think we should go around, or us as a community, how should we try to allay those concerns? You know, what are the sorts of things that we can do to help farmers get through, you know, what must be a bit of a worry? As you say, there's plenty of stuff going on in their lives.
Yeah. Well, with the Missing Lynx Project, I was lucky enough to be one of the farmers that they took on a trip to Switzerland and Germany in the beginning of this year. And we went to a couple of institutes or programs that have been responsible for reintroducing lynx and monitoring the populations and how things were going. But we also visited 3 different farmers who were farming in areas where there were lynx. And that was very reassuring. They had mitigation measures such as a lot of electric fencing and guardian dogs, which were fantastic to see, but may not be so applicable to this area. And we also learned about the different countries have got different compensation measures. Some of them will compensate farmers for any losses that can be attributed to lynx. Others will make a blanket payment if you're farming in an area where there is a risk of lynx attack has been introduced. And you know, the farmer focus groups then asked the group of farmers what they thought would be suitable for this country. So we felt that our views were being listened to, and you know, we felt reassured that if it's never nice to lose an animal, but if at least the financial loss was taken care of, you know, that makes you think, okay, well, maybe this is all right.
And as Deb said, we're probably not talking about many losses here, you know, given that our sheep are out in the open and this is a forest animal that mainly preys on deer and so on.
Exactly. I mean, we visited one farm in Switzerland, and they had, you know, a small meadow carved out of an area of forest, more or less, with trees all around. Whereas here, the forest and the grazing land tends to be separated. So this guy we visited, he had got an electric fence, but his neighbour, who was only 200 or 300 meters away from the wood, just in a much more open landscape, didn't take any measures and hadn't had any losses from lynx at all. So they really were staying very much in the forest.
Yeah, that's very, very interesting. Okay, well, look, thanks, Sue. We'll come back to you with questions later, I'm sure. Let's just move across to Duncan now, who's Head of Conservation or Director of Conservation at the Northumberland Wildlife Trust. I first met Duncan many years ago on the Border Myres, which is very close to where Sue farms. Fantastic peatlands again up there. But Duncan, can you give me, just take yourself off mute, by the way, but just can you just give me a bit of context here, because it's not just about reintroducing lynx into this one part of Northumberland, but actually there's the context of what is a really spectacular part of England, isn't it? I mean, northern Northumberland is really quite special, isn't it?
Northern Northumberland's amazing. Empty, it's probably the emptiest bit of England, isn't it? So it's got from a people point of view anyway, and therefore, you know, conversely, actually has an amazing amount of wildlife across that section. And I think what's really amazing in the last few years is to see some of that return in its own way. So, you know, pine martens are returning back into Northumberland now in quite decent numbers. We've also had golden eagles coming across from southern Scotland and starting to sort of, you know, prospect in our area. So, you know, we've got nature returning at last to this part of the world, and yeah, it's an amazing part to work in and to live in. You know, it wouldn't be great if we could actually add to that and actually bring some other species that we've lost. And you mentioned it earlier. You know, we've lost so many things, haven't we? We've lost so many animals that are just, you know, are extinct from this country. They're not coming back on their own, so we've got to do something about that.
Brilliant. And I mean, will lynx make much difference for wildlife in the area? It sounds like they're just doing pretty well anyway.
Yeah? Well, of course. I mean, it's about everything together, isn't it? It's about that ecosystem. We've got to try and rebuild ecosystems and not concentrate on single things. And I think that's really important. And it sounds counterintuitive. We're talking here about a single species, but actually we're not talking about it from the point of view of just bringing back lynx. We're talking about bringing back something like lynx to just try and rebuild that whole broken ecosystem that doesn't really function any longer properly. And that those conversations can be had about all sorts of things. And we've spent a lot of time in Northumberland. We've reintroduced water voles, for example, in Kielder. That's a pretty that no one's going to be particularly upset by that concept. But it's still an important species to bring back into that area to start that process, because water voles, great to bring them back on their own, but of course they're also a prey species for lots of other things, so it helps all the things that are around it too. So it's not about it is a species project, but it's actually not a species project. It's a rebuilding nature, and the whole web of nature is what it's all about.
So the Missing Lynx is actually quite a clever name, because we're not talking about just missing the lynx as a beautiful cat, but also missing ecological links and how we rebalance the whole process. Okay, but reflecting on what the panel's been talking about just now, Duncan, where do you think the attention of the program should go now? What are the fundamental things that we need to get right before we think about actually bringing back lynx into that area?
Well, I think maybe it's worth rewinding a minute, and thinking about where we came into this, because it wasn't an necessarily easy decision. This is it has its controversy. We understand that entirely, and I think we did puzzle over this for a while, and we wondered about our involvement. But we felt that actually we'd been advocating. We'd publicly said that we really should be bringing back some of these missing species, including beavers, including lynx, if it was socially acceptable to do so, and ecologically, obviously. And it was a great opportunity working with Livescape and obviously yourselves at Wildlife Trust to think about how whether we could be part of that process. And I think being able to help with the design of that social consultation, to feel that we'd got that right, and we felt that was as good as we could get. It's never going to be perfect. There's always going to be some people say they haven't had a chance to have their say, but we've really tried hard. As Deb said, 10,000 people. That's a lot of people to talk to over a relatively short amount of time. So we're really confident that project felt like it was trying to do the right thing, and trying to do it properly as well. And as Sue said as well, we were trying to talk to people. We weren't just there to say, wouldn't this be great? Let's bring this animal back. Doesn't it look fantastic? We were there to say, well, we know that there's going to be some issues. The problems that might be overblown, they might not be, but we know there might be some issues, and but we need to work with people to solve those. And I think that's really where we go next. So the next stage, we know that 72% are broadly in favour, but we know that doesn't answer all those questions. It's never going to do that. The answering of the questions is to make it acceptable to as many people as possible. They don't have to support it, but it needs to be acceptable to them. And again, reflecting on what Sue's been talking about, those people who are concerned and have worries about livestock, for example, we need to find methods and mechanisms by which we can either help reduce the losses. We can make people feel comfortable and confident that those losses won't be particularly great anyway. And ultimately, if things if the things really do go wrong, and there are some losses of sheep, for example, then there is some compensation in place. So it's co-design now. I think it's co-design with all those people, and including those people who maybe aren't in support. If we can get them on board to co-design so that it can be as little damaging or minimize the damage as possible, then that's got to be a great thing.
Great. Look, thank you very much for that. We've had so much interest in this, and I guess that's not surprising. This is a very charismatic animal, not without its controversy. So we've got a huge number of people joining us tonight. We've got people from Devon, from Somerset, from Lincolnshire, from South Wales, from Dorset, from Northumberland. I'm sure there's many other places. And questions coming in all the time. But let me just start with something. There's a question from Sue, actually. So she was talking about, I think, Debs, I don't know if you said it or it's just that I know it, that we're probably talking about releasing animals from captive bred sources, so that from zoos and reintroduction places. So Sue wanted to know can we be sure that they'd be all right out in the wild? Will they hunt deer, or will they actually go and eat something else? Debs, you're on mute just before you reply.
Sorry, just trying to find it. So links for reintroduction projects, where do you get the links from? The two primary routes are from the wild or from captivity. So harvesting animals from the wild is a process that's been used for some reintroduction projects, but alternatively, animals that are in captivity. In the kind of early stages of links reintroduction, it was sometimes just literally captive animals that were released into the wild as part of the reintroduction. What tends to happen now is that the animals in captivity breed and produce offspring. And if you keep those offspring out of human contact, they don't become used to humans, habituate with humans. So they retain their wild characteristics. So that process of breeding offspring and then using those offspring in reintroductions is quite well established across Europe. And there's groups that are designing protocols to make sure that that's done properly. So what does a breeding enclosure look like? How should the keepers look after them to minimize contact? What should be the noise around the enclosure? The movement of the animals to health check them? What should the interventions be? And that includes behavior testing as well. So to make sure that those offspring do retain their kind of natural fear, aversiveness to humans. And it would be those animals that would be released.
Great. And Marco, is that your experience in mainland Europe? Have these captive bred species lynx come in and kind of adapted to the wild okay?
Yeah, it's a common practice at the moment to also use captive animals for reintroductions, also some wild ones, but the number of captive animals is increasing, as Deborah said, and they are completely able to integrate in the wild. And also they don't show habituated behavior, not going close to humans. So we also had a case that a captive animal broke out of our enclosure, and we tried to get it, but it was not possible. So it integrated completely in the wild and was gone.
Great, thanks, Marco. Okay, I've had quite a few questions. One from Andrew: how does the panel view the current political climate for lynx reintroduction? And this ultimately is a political decision. Sometimes it's a small p decision, but somebody has to decide. Duncan, can you take us through the process? What's the legal process that we have to go through to get lynx reintroduced into a place like the UK?
Well, what we'd have to do is to submit a license for that process, and the license will demand a lot of that information that Debs in particular has outlined already. So is it ecologically feasible? Is it socially feasible? And have we got all the practical things in place to enable that to happen? And so we're confident we've ticked a number of those boxes. We've got more work to do on some of them and some of the specific detail that comes behind that. But once we've done all those, ultimately the next question is whether the political climate is in the right place to go about that. So I think that's a decision we have to understand a bit more about the politics and the sense about what the government and government ministers and other people like that are actually thinking. So it is that decision that I guess is the big unknown, isn't it?
And Sue, little weather eye on local politics. What's your perception in the local area? Do you think your local politicians are favourable, or do you see some opposition?
I don't know. I haven't really spoken with the local politicians so much as local farmers, and generally the ignorant position, as it was with me, was no. We don't want dangerous animals, dangerous in inverted commas, roaming about. But another farmer also nearby went on the lynx trip with me, and we just invited a bunch of our neighbours to a meeting in the village hall, and there were some tough questions, and initially quite a sort of anti-feeling there. But by the end of the evening, when we sort of, stopped for a cup of tea and something to eat, the chat around the table was, well, okay, we'll think about this a bit more, So yeah, I think that there is a possibility, yes, that it could be
Yeah,
accepted.
which just shows, doesn't it? I mean, politics starts at a local level, and at a local level, we just need to talk these things through more,
Yes.
so that, we actually do understand people's views and
Yeah.
get a feel for it. Debs, it'll be Lifescapes that puts the application if we decide to do that. What's the formal process? What's the steps you have to go through, and who ultimately makes the decision?
So Duncan mentioned license application. The formal process would be, the habitat patch sort of release point is within Northern England, so it would be license application to Natural England. So we do meet and talk with Natural England, but also Nature Scot would be consulted because it's a cross-border habitat patch. So Natural England, Nature Scot are the statutory organisations that licence application would go to. There is a very, as you can imagine, structured process for that, and there's both guidelines within England and within Scotland separately about how that should be approached, and there's also international guidelines on how to approach reintroductions, what you need to include, what you need to think about. What was it? Was there a second part to the question?
Well, who ultimately makes the decision?
Okay. So license applications are decided by Natural England, unless it goes up to the government for consideration. From past experience, it is likely that it would go to the government for consideration. We focused the consultation, so all of that engagement with the exhibition and all the activities we did around the habitat patch area, so Northern England, Southern Scotland, in the first instance, because it was most important that it was the local people where those conversations were happening. Once we had an idea of the level of support within that area, and we were progressing some of the thinking and the planning about how it could be done, we then moved the conversation to a more national level, and that includes having political conversations, so taking it to different forums and to MPs individually, and starting to investigate what the political feeling is around it. But ultimately, we do have international and national commitments to actually restore nature, and as several of us has mentioned, we are one of the most depleted in the whole of the world. So it is something that we ought to, as a country, be thinking about.
Brilliant. Yeah, no, absolutely. Look, and a sort of a slightly a connected question actually from Alexander and Charlotte, and actually there was a bunch of people that were worried about this, is that, we know that lynx will prey mostly on deer, but they will prey on other things. So a bit of concerns around some of those protected species like pine marten, beaver, red squirrels, if they were reintroduced further north in Scotland, capercaillie, wildcat. Marco, what's the evidence for worries about lynx kind of impacting upon some of the rarer species, the really charismatic species that we've got already? Is that a problem?
I would say the species you mentioned, we have no problem. So we see lynx together with capercaillie, and we even see increasing population trends. And there are also nice studies from Scandinavia that show that in areas where you have lynx, the capercaillie population is increasing. And why is that the case? It's because the lynx, they prey on foxes, and foxes prey on capercaillie. And so the lynx population is limiting the fox population, and that makes the capercaillie population increasing. And the same is also with pine marten. Pine marten live in the trees, and the lynx, they have no chance to hunt them. Also, the density of lynx is very low. So you can have, in average, maybe one lynx per 100 square kilometers. And that's a very low density. And so the chance that they kill a pine marten or other rare species is very low. And beavers are too big. So we have the case that the wolves, they are killing beavers. So we have wolves specialized on beavers, reducing the beaver numbers, but not the lynx.
Right, that's very interesting. And from a British perspective, Debs, I mean, these protected species, we kind of have to think about them as well when we model out the ecology. How have you gone about that?
So
I
that's
didn't get,
part of.
yeah, oops, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah. No.
You've probably got something to add, Marco, if I just describe what we've been doing. So that's been part of the ecological assessment work that we've been doing, thinking about both the potential impact of lynx on protected areas, the special features, so the species that are within those protected areas. But what we wanted to do was also, as part of going out and talking to 10,000 people, was to find out what species people were also worried about. So we've gone through a systematic process of identifying the species that we need to think about because they're protected or they're rare, but also what are the species that people are worried about and are particularly in people's hearts in this part of the country. So some of that work has been completed, some of it is still ongoing. Fundamentally, it's as Marco says, lynx lives alongside these species that are found in Europe and lives alongside them there. It is possible for lynx to live alongside them here. The concern is when we've got small fragmented populations that we need to think about those species. But I don't know if
Right.
Marco was going to add something to.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, so we are managing a national park here, and for the national park, the lynx is essential because we try to protect natural processes, and predation is a very important natural process. And maybe also for protected areas, it's also good to have lynx from the economical point of view, because the people, the tourists, they like lynx. They like to go to areas where you have lynx. And there are many examples from Central Europe where there's a lot of advertisement. If you go for a catalog for tourists and you see a lynx on the top of it, because they are flagship species, they are indicators of natural landscapes. It's not wilderness what they need. They need just less infrastructure in the landscape. And this also attracts the people. So we have some lynx beer, for example. So there are a lot of things where the people show that they like the lynx. There are a lot of souvenirs. You can buy lynx t-shirts. The children love these t-shirts. And so it's really also an economical factor. And I'm quite sure if you have the possibility to release lynx in the UK or in Scotland, that there will be a pilgrimage of people going to the area, even if they don't see the lynx, but you also can see some. If you don't see the lynx, the people will come and they will be fascinated by these elusive, very beautiful animals.
I'm rather liking the idea of a lynx beer being sold by the local breweries in Northumberland. So, I mean, how important is that to especially the farming community? This is not the richest part of the world, northern Northumberland. We know that farming, as you said earlier, there's issues that farmers have to face at the moment. Subsidies changing, trading relationships are changing. The climate is changing, so there's a lot going on. How welcome would it be to have increased tourism and so forth, the sorts of things that might happen as a result of a lynx reintroduction?
Well, I think it would definitely be welcome. I mean, we've got Hadrian's Wall, which is only 3 miles from this farm, but the tourists there are very linear. They don't go, they want to see Hadrian's Wall, and that's what they come and they stay there. Whereas there's all the countryside around, and it's much harder to get people out into that countryside. So if you happen to have a bed and breakfast right on the line of the wall, great, you've got a lot of custom. But any distance away, then the people walking along the wall don't want an extra 5-mile hike to get to their accommodation at the end. But if there was lynx generally in the area, that would spread the tourism around. And we've got, tea rooms they call them up here rather than cafes, but we've got village tea rooms and village pubs, and they really struggle. So more tourists in the hinterland would definitely be great for the community here.
Amazing. Well, that would be an amazing thing to see. Look, we are actually coming to the end of this wildlife. It's unbelievable. There's so many questions. I really haven't got to all these different questions. So many topics that we can address, but we are coming to the end. What I'm going to do is I want to give each panelist 1 minute to say, what is it that fills them with hope about the return of the missing links? What's the thing that they would love to see and why they would love to see that? So let's start with Duncan.
Yeah, thanks. The Missing Links really is, well, the project is amazing start. It's an amazing way of engaging people as well in nature as a whole. The conversations aren't just about links, they're about rebuilding biodiversity, rebuilding nature across Northumberland. And I think that's what's really important. So, whether or not we ultimately succeed, and I hope we do, but whether or not we do, with the conversations about how broken it is and how much we can do to fix it, are more than welcome, and a really great opportunity to engage so many people in that conversation.
Brilliant. And for you, Marco?
Yeah, I think it's to have links. It's a great feeling. If you are in the forest now, at the moment we have some tracking snow, like just 2 centimeters, and you go out and you see a track of a lynx in the field. That gives you a great feeling, a sense of wilderness, and to give that back to the land. That's really great. And the people like it, and the Lynx is a wonderful vehicle to make people happy about nature and to engage people in protecting nature.
Brilliant. Debs, over to you.
We can restore nature. We can turn the tide on the situation that we're in. And ultimately, we all want the same thing. We all want healthy environments, we want clean water, we want pollinators, we want nature to be functioning, and links can be part of that. We've seen across Europe that it is doable, it is possible to live alongside links. We're having the conversation, we're finding out what people want broadly. People want this to happen. We need to do it really carefully with people who are potentially impacted by it. But if we can do it carefully and collectively and design it, it really could be part of Northern England, Southern Scotland becoming restored, and then that's spreading out across the rest of the country.
Fantastic. And Sue, final word from you. So, why would you like to see links back?
Well, as in the film at the beginning about my farm, we showed that we were really concentrating on biodiversity and restoring nature, and to have links in the forest by the farm would just mean that we'd done it. That yeah, as a part of a bigger project, it was being done. In one of the cloughs, one of the valleys on my farm is called Cat Clough. So it would just be amazing to have cats back there.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of place names associated with some of our lost species, not least lynx. White storks down in Sussex and things like that. So, yeah, wouldn't it be amazing? Look, we've come to the end, unfortunately. It's just been the most fantastic conversation. I've got quite a few thank yous to say, So firstly, thanks to the team behind the scenes here that put on these wildlife. I know these are complicated things to put on sometimes. We need to thank our funders. Actually, a lot of the funding for this has come from the Ecological Restoration Fund. Thank you to them. And also thanks to People's Postcode Lottery, the players of the People's Postcode Lottery who helped put these wildlives on. So thank you to them. Thank you, of course, to our panelists. Haven't they been amazing? You lot have been absolutely amazing. Thank you very much. I feel a bit humbled to be in such a room of such high expertise on what is a very complicated topic, actually. And thank you to the audience who've been asking the most brilliant questions. And I wish I could have got to more of these questions, but you've been absolutely brilliant. I just want to announce the next wildlife that's going to be on. I'm just going to hand over to Deborah. She's going to just add something else in.
I didn't mention before, there's a national questionnaire. So we are seeking everybody's opinion, and I'm sure we can probably share a link to it.
I'm sure the team will put that link up, but just quickly, where would you find it, Debs?
So it's on the Missing Lynx Project website, and it gets shared on social media. We can make sure there's another share on social media, but filling it in, but sharing it with as many people as possible. So we've got a large collective voice to find out what people think, not just in the region, but nationally.
We're very keen that people fill out that questionnaire. So, you know, if you're positive or negative, you know, we're keen to hear from you. We want to get this right. It's important that we hear everybody's voice on this. So our next wildlife is going to be on the 3rd of December. Craig is going to be in conversation with Liz Bonnan, who's a famous broadcaster. I'm sure you know Liz. She's a fabulous person, so do join us. It's you have the opportunity to join live as well. It's going to be in North Wales, but obviously we'll join on YouTube as well. So if you want to go to the live broadcast, turn up in Bangor. Details on the website. But please tune into the Wildlife Trust YouTube channel. I think the idea of having lynx back in this country is incredible. I mean, not only is it a beautiful, beautiful animal, but for me, it's an absolute icon of nature's recovery. I think Deb's put it very well. You know, we can restore nature in the UK. You know, we might be one of the most depleted places on earth, but we still have some of the most beautiful habitats, not least northern Northumberland and the Hadrian's Wall area, which is utterly, utterly gorgeous. The idea of having lynx back into that landscape, I just think would be absolutely fantastic. And I, for one, would love to see that happen. This has been Wildlife. We are the Wildlife Trust. It's been great to have you here tonight. See you next time. Good night. Thank you very much.